Good evening, everyone. Welcome November the 2nd, 2021 to our committee meetings and planning board meeting. I'd like to welcome my fellow councillors. And we have Colin McLean from the Journal Pioneer. Welcome, Colin. We have our city staff members. I believe we have our electrical engineer, Greg Goody, and we have our acting police chief, Sinclair Walker. We have our director of human resources, Gordon McFarlane, and lawyer in City Hall, and we have our CAO, Rob Philpott, with us, and our director of finance, Krista Dunsford with us, and Brian Harlick here on my left, running the controls, and we have Aaron McDonald, our engineer from Technical Services, members of the public, and we have a number of viewers on YouTube, I understand, so welcome to everybody, and we'll continue on with the meeting. So the first item on the agenda is, which one? Planning Board. Turn it over to the chair, Councillor Brian McFeely. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship, and with your permission, I'll stay seated closer to the mic so
Fine.
that people on the YouTube channel can hear me better. So the November 2nd Planning Board meeting agenda was circulated, so we'll call the meeting to order and ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Ramsey, that the agenda be approved as circulated. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. So just for the information of those watching on YouTube and those in the audience, the planning board members include Councillor Ramsey, Councillor Adams, the mayor, and myself as chair. So when we discuss things at planning board, certainly all council are involved in those discussions, but when we go to the vote, it's those members that would have the vote. So with that, we'll move into the first item, the recommendation on Colin Avenue, the major subdivision preliminary approval. The supporting explanation, the purpose, subdivide PID number 1005123, creating 11 single-family dwelling lots. The planning board is required to make a recommendation to council on this application, and preliminary approval is required by council before the development can proceed. Background: an application was received from Robbins Equity Group Limited to subdivide this parcel into 11 lots intended for single-family dwellings. The proposed lots and the extension of Colin Avenue and Mountain Avenue are indicated on preliminary survey plan prepared by Island Surveys and Engineering ISC Survey Limited, dated October 6, 2009, and the plan is included there, Your Worship.
Could I make a notification right now of something I just noticed? My daughter lives in the property, or has the property right next to this, and wouldn't that be a conflict for me to even participate here?
I think if you feel it's a conflict,
well,
and you want to remove yourself, we still have a quorum for planning board.
I would rather do that.
So we're fine.
So
yeah,
I will step out of the room until you finish this item.
That's probably appropriate if you think you're in conflict.
Well, it's better that I do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Your Worship.
Coffee with me, and
take your coffee with you, and we'll work through it. Thank you, Your Worship.
I live 2 houses down where I'm going to sit through. It's planning board. We don't have a say or.
You don't have a vote in planning board, so you're fine. It's my opinion that you're fine. I know the other planning board members are fine. So, report. As required under section 3.6 of the subdivision and site development bylaw, council, planning board, and the development officer shall consider the following general criteria when reviewing development applications under this bylaw as applicable. A, conformity with this bylaw. Staff comment: this subdivision promotes smart growth, making effective use of the land, and applies to the principle of orderly and following. B, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment: the current land use, low-density residential, conforms with the official plan, section 5.1, and the criteria E, F, G, and H identified in the Parks and Green Space Plan, section 8.4. 5.1 Residential Development. The first part of this section describes general residential development policies pertaining to housing options, zoning categories, and residential land allocations. The second part describes specific policies pertaining to special planning and development areas and locations for high-density housing. The third part deals with other residential issues. Residential densities, low-density housing types, single-family, semi-detached, and duplexes. Minimum lot size, 6,781 to 7,500 square feet. For single-family homes, 8,000 square feet semi-detached and 8,000 square feet duplexes. C, conformity with the zoning bylaw. Staff comment, the proposed single-family dwelling lot conforms with the zoning bylaw as the land is zoned single-family residential R1. The orderly and following nature of the development. Staff comment, this development promotes residential growth and is an example of infilling vacant land. E, physical suitability of the site for the proposed development, including avoidance of natural hazards, undue water runoff, or environmental damage. Staff comment, the site is suitable for development. The development will have no impact regarding natural hazards or environmental damage, as these matters are not applicable with this development. Water runoff will be directed to city storm drainage system or designated site drainage system. F, compatibility with the proposed development, with the present and future surrounding patterns of streets, lots, and services, including conformity with all city concept plans. Staff comment, this development is compatible with the current and future surrounding patterns of streets and services. The site has been intended for development since 1987 when it was first approved. The existing public street network and municipal services can be extended to this development. Colin Avenue is intended to be connected to the proposed east-west connector street. D, adequacy of the applicant's proposal for traffic circulation, parking, pedestrian access, water supply, sewer disposal, and storm drainage, including adequacy of the city streets and services to handle increased loads. Staff comment, the proposed street pattern will eliminate 2 existing dead-end streets. There will be minimum change in traffic flow on Colin Avenue and Mountain Avenue as a result of the 11 additional lots. The proposed residential street will be designed to meet a 50-kilometer-per-hour local street with the speed limit posted at 40 kilometers per hour. The proposed street would have an 8.8 meter width with concrete curbs. The paved shoulder on the proposed street will allow for safe pedestrian traffic. The city water supply and water main lines in the area are adequate for the new subdivision. The proposed extension of services will eliminate 2 dead-end water lines. The developer owner will be required to install new storm drainage mains, water and sewer mains, and new service laterals will need to be installed to the property lines. All infrastructure will be designed and installed to meet city standards at the developer's cost. Suitability of parkland and provision. Staff comment, Parkland Dedication was previously satisfied for this development. There is ample parkland, the Rotary Park, 5 acres, the Bluebell Park, 2.2 acres within 400 meters of the subject property. Impact of the city finances and budget on the city finances and budget. Staff comment, the developer has requested the city cost share a portion of the municipal servicing. Proof of conformity with any applicable provincial legislation and regulations. Nothing there from the staff. Other matters as considered relevant. Staff comment, the proposed streets will be named as per the continuation of the existing street. So the recommendation from staff, technical service staff recommend the application from Robbins Equity Group Limited for preliminary subdivision to subdivide PID number 1005123 into 11 lots intended for single-family dwellings, be recommended to be approved by council subject to the following. The developer shall satisfy all municipal servicing requirements. The developer enters into a subdivision construction agreement as per section 8.5 of the subdivision site development bylaw. The planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward for council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, a preliminary subdivision approval be granted to Robbins Equity Group Limited, subdivide PID number 1005123 into 11 lots intended for single-family dwellings. Be recommended to be approved by council. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to that, and then we will open the floor to discussion. So moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Adams. The floor is open for discussion. Just a couple of questions, I guess, that I would have. Aaron, the developer has requested the city cost share a portion of the municipal servicing.
We brought that to you a year ago when they brought forward their proposal. We went through the concepts of, they have 11 lots with street and they had 2 stubs. I have to look back from the details of it. As it was mentioned, the subdivision started in 87, the last phase was done in 97. This block of land was left as the last phase and never was completed. We had probably 4 different developers look at the piece for development and could make it financially viable to proceed. And through the course of as was mentioned, in the 4 or 5 years, for sure at least, we've had requests for at the end of Colin to be into a turnaround where the service vehicles are using local driveways, and in one instance one of the service vehicles hit one of the houses. We as a city did not own this land to be able to acquire or to make a temporary turnaround, so we had brought forward to you a year ago that making the temporary turnaround and the 2 dead-end water lines was, so we went through the cost analysis at that time a year ago. You guys approved it. We put it into the budget process last year, and the money was approved in this year's budget. It's still there. We waited until, and if this development proceeds, and if they don't get the work completed by our budget cycle this year, we'll be recommending that we move it to next year to fit their development timeline.
Yeah, I recall that now.
Okay.
Memory refreshed, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who was first, Councillor McDougall.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor McPeely. You asked the same question I was going to ask, but I do remember that now. Was there a cost?
Yep.
Was there an amount that?
Yeah, I think it's, we split it into 70 in the utility and 100 in the general.
Yeah.
And we had gone through just what our cost would be if we had gotten permission or an easement to cross. We would be looping the water mains ourselves if that project was not feasible. And I think we went through, and that's why we broke it into the water and the utility to say a portion should be going to loop the 2 water mains. Okay. And the other part was they were making a stub street at the top. They had a developer right all the way to the top. If I popped it up, just give me 1 second.
No, that's fine.
Councillor Durant?
There was a couple before me, but if order is important. Sure, okay. I know last time this came up for basically a rezoning first time, and I know a lot of the opposition was not so much that it was being developed, but that it was proposed to be developed to the R2. And the other concern, of course, was the one entrance in and out. But if I recall correctly, and correct me if I don't, but I think one of the proposed compromises at the time was that this would generally be, I know there's folks from the area, so they can correct me as well. It was generally accepted at that time that if they were kept single-family homes, that it was more or less acceptable by the residents in the area. So with that being said, does this satisfy at least that? They're going to be single-family homes?
The property is zoned R1, and as you mentioned,
Yeah.
they come in to make a request to R2 to make it into semi-detached.
Yeah.
That was denied, and now the property is still R1,
Yeah.
and they're permitted as right use is R1, and that's what the proposal is
Yeah.
for 11 single-family lots.
So the square footage of those lots doesn't allow for duplexes, or
The zoning doesn't.
the zoning doesn't?
Yeah, and the lot frontage is 23 to 26, which is similar to some of the lots on Colin are 26. And based on, I noticed a couple of these are 23 to fit that extra cross street or connection to Mountain, but the minimum is 23. So
And-
they are meeting the frontage.
Yeah, and that last time, I believe it was 10 lots, but maybe they were a little bigger.
Yeah, I think that's what's in this proposal now.
Yeah.
Whenever they actually get into more detail as to what they could fit, they would have been having to be different if they would have had to be 26 if they were semi, because you need to make each one of them 13 if you further subdivide them. So an R2 requires a 26 meter frontage and R3 requires a 23. So maybe by rejigging the lots, they were able to, the other ones might have been more than 26 and couldn't get an extra 26, but if there's a couple 23s and the rest are 26, they can make 11.
Right.
But
And I guess the only final point that I wanted to make or bring up was that we do, or at least we have been for the last 2 or 3 years, put money in the budget towards the east-west connector. So seeing as the proposal here is single-family R1 homes, you're never gonna see less than that for this particular area. So if we were, and I'm not saying I'm for it or against it, but if we were to not, as a council, accept this, then really that east-west connector topic or budget amount that comes up every year, you're not gonna get any less dense development up there than a single-family R1 home. So really, if we're putting money in the budget for east-west connector every year, but yet this doesn't go through, do you know what I'm saying? Or we kinda, what's the east-west connector gonna be connecting to if it's not the bare minimum single-family home development?
And if this development does not go through, there's no connection to provide the second exit out of that area onto the east-west. This is the one parcel that's left undeveloped, and on the map there, that's, sorry.
And that's really just all I just wanted to ponder, I guess, is if we're interested as a city in developing forward that east-west connector.
This is the parcel that's being
Yeah.
proposed for
Yeah.
us today, and the connection would be onto this long wavy purple line is what's the east-west. So to get that connection or second exit out of there, it's through this parcel of land to connect
Yeah.
onto.
So if we don't go through, if planning board doesn't go through and council doesn't go through with this particular proposal, chances are, you know, that east-west connector, should it go where it's proposed to go, isn't gonna have anything around it, because if I understand correctly, this is the bare minimum
This is
type of
the-
development that can possibly,
This is the lowest density
Lowest
housing we
density.
have, R1 single family, that's currently zoned, and that's what the developer's proposing.
Yeah,
thank you.
exactly. Okay, we'll move on. Thank you, Councillor. I'm not sure who was next. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I just had a quick question about the Parkland dedication. It says there is ample parkland. Obviously, there is up there, but I know there are improvements needed in the Bluebell Park and so on. So don't developers usually have to make a donation to that?
Yes, and when they went back through the literature, when the first phases went in 87 to 97, they found the letters where the developers at that time provided the Parkland dedication for the entire parcel. Say for the entire acreage that they owned, even though they only developed 2/3 of it. So staff went through and found where they didn't do it in pieces. I forget what the contribution was, whether it was land or cash, but we found the letter where they had stated,
Okay.
here's the entire parkland contribution for that entire acres that they owned.
So that need's been satisfied.
It was satisfied by the previous
It was
owner.
like
Yeah.
credited ahead. Okay, perfect, thanks.
Patiently waiting, Councillor Snow.
Always patient. I'm just gonna circle back to what Councilor McFeely was asking. Those shared costs, this is sort of one of those one-offs just because the development was developed so many years ago. Now we require any new developers to sort of carry that land forward for the next property, right? Am I right in saying that the previous developer just didn't
Correct.
extend their,
They were left, well, I think if Brian could go back to the other, do you have the other control of the other screen, Brian, sorry? Typically, you'd have 11 lots and they're making their return on lots on both sides. He's only going 5 lots and he already has, I'll wait for Brian, sorry. Yeah. So he has basically 11, a street, and it's only 5 lots each side, but he has to eliminate a lot on each side to allow for the connecting streets,
Right.
which typically wouldn't happen. You could incorporate that cost over your entire subdivision, but not when you're doing it over the last portion. So that's why it hasn't been feasible for the other 4 developers previously to make this a go.
But now, anytime we have a development like this, where there's future development down the road, we make sure that those issues are taken care of by the
Right.
current person developing.
And we ran into that situation on
Right.
Mountain. The city had a budding property, the stub street wasn't done between the 2 lots of Walker. When they went to develop those 6 lots, they came forward, the city paid for that sub street to come into there. They weren't gonna get the return on the 6th, having 3 lots on each side, and the road wasn't built back to the existing lots.
So as a city, if we want this development to go ahead, most likely we have to caution.
That was our logic a year ago, we
Okay.
brought it forward to us with the rationale, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing any other lights. Planning Board, are you ready for the question? If so, I'll read the recommendation once again. Preliminary subdivision approval be granted to Robbins Equity Group Limited to subdivide PID number 1005123 into 11 lots intended for single-family dwelling, to be recommended to be approved by council, and that was moved by Councillor Ramsey and seconded by Councillor Adams. All those in favor say aye. Contrary? Motion carried unanimously. So that will go to council. That's not on tonight's special meeting. Monthly meeting, yeah, on the 15th. Okay, and our second item on planning board agenda is restricted use application for 715 Water Street East. The supporting explanation. Purpose. The purpose of the restricted use is to allow heavy machinery repair shop as restricted use in the single-family residential R1 zone. The restricted use is subject to City Council approval. Background. As a result of a complaint form filed with the city, neighbors in the area were concerned about derelict buses on the property, the operation of a heavy machinery shop, a bus tour business, and a dwelling unit above a garage at 715 Water Street East. The property owner was advised that a heavy machinery repair shop, a dwelling unit, and a bus tour business did not comply with the zoning bylaw. Thus, an application was received from Karen's Motel, Inc. for 715 Water Street East, PID number 863662 and PID number 836288 to allow a heavy machinery repair shop, a dwelling unit, and a bus tour business as restricted uses in the R1 zone. After the public meeting held on September 13, 2023, city staff scheduled a meeting with the applicant to advise that the operations of the proposed restricted uses would have to cease until city approvals and permits were granted. The applicant was also advised that restricted uses being proposed would require compliance with the building bylaw. The applicant ceased all uses as requested by the city and will move forward with the proposed restricted use for a heavy machinery repair shop only. The dwelling unit has been decommissioned. The bus tour business will be discontinued as of November 3rd, 2021 at this location. And the map showing the subject property is attached there. The proposed restricted use area will encompass portions of 2 properties, PID number 863662 and PID number 836288, and Building A. Building A was built in 2011 as an accessory, and Building A is designated on the picture there. In 2011 as an accessory storage building, and this building is being considered to house the proposed heavy machinery repair shop use. A portion of PID number 863662 and a portion of PID number 836288 are also being considered as part of the proposed restricted use, as the land will be necessary to maneuver the vehicles being serviced in Building A. Building B, Quonset hut, as an accessory storage building and is not being considered for the proposed restricted use. The report under section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw, when planning board reviews a restricted use, it has to consider the following general criteria as applicable. A, conformity with all requirements of this bylaw, the zoning bylaw. Staff comment, this application requires a restricted use approval in the single-family residential zone in order to conform to this bylaw. The current zoning, single-family residential R1, does not change. One of the purposes of the restricted use designation is to accommodate uses where rezoning would result in undesirable land uses due to the as of right in that zone. The proposed restricted use, industrial, heavy machinery repair shop, is permitted in other zones. If the property were to be rezoned to industrial to accommodate the restricted use being sought, it would result in other undesirable land uses in the area. B, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment, the restricted use conforms to the official plan as the land use will remain as single-family residential. Should the restricted use cease to operate for 12 months, the restricted use lapses and the zoning remains a single-family residential R1 and can be utilized as such. The restricted use is property specific. A change in property ownership would not require an approval. C, suitability of the site for the proposed development. Staff comment. The site is suitable for the proposed restricted use as the site is located on a collector street, Water Street East, with municipal services available. D, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. Staff comment, the existing land use surrounding the property are single-family residential R1 to the northeast and to the west, with service commercial C2 abutting the property to the immediate east and south. The current land use to the north is agricultural, with the projected the land use to be residential. The properties have been utilized in a business manner for a number of years. As a result of proposed restricted use, should have minimal impact on the surrounding properties. And again, the map is attached there for reference. E, any comment from residents or other interested persons. A public meeting was held on September 13, 2021. The public meeting notice was advertised in the August 30th edition of The Guardian. 37 letters were mailed to 24 property owners. Aaron Wedd spoke, providing an overview of the proposed intent for the restricted use. Staff comment. The applicant provided an explanation of his request for the initial proposed restricted uses. Troy Campbell, 728 Flamingo Drive, indicated that he was concerned with the derelict buses and the shipping containers on the property and the safety of children who were playing on the buses. Mr. Campbell had no issue with the mechanic shop or the bus business itself. Jonathan McKay, 727 Robin Street, spoke. He indicated that he had no issue with any businesses on the property or the state of the property. Megan McKay, 727 Robin Street, spoke and indicated she had no issue with any business on the property or the state of the property. Chad Montgomery, 730 Flamingo Drive, indicated that he was concerned with the derelict buses on the property and was worried there would be more in the future. He also questioned why the applicant was requesting approval now when the businesses have been in operation for some time. The concerns raised have been addressed throughout this report. F, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking and parklands for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements. Staff comment. The city water supply and sewer treatment systems can handle the loading created by the restricted use. Water Street East will handle the volume of traffic from the proposed restricted use. Stormwater in the existing parking area may require an underground storm system to collect the drainage and pipe it to the existing street ditch system on Water Street East. The subject property has existing phase 1 electrical service, 3-phase electrical services available on Water Street East to service the area. Any electrical service upgrades or additional service requirements are at the cost of the owner. On-site parking is available for the proposed use. Parkland dedication is not required for a restricted use application. G, impacts of the development on pedestrian vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. Staff comment, the existing access meets the maximum width to serve the restricted use being requested. There is a sidewalk on the south side of Water Street East and a pedestrian crossing nearby on Small Avenue. H, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Staff comment, there are no compatibility issues regarding scenic or heritage resources. The heavy machinery repair shop is required to have a separator for sand, oil, and grit that removes the environmentally sensitive substance from the wastewater before the remaining waste runs into the city sanitary sewer lines to be treated at one of our treatment facilities. Properties with sand, oil, and grit separators are responsible for regular pumping and cleaning in order to properly filter and hold designated solids from entering the city sewer system. Roof drains from Building A are directly piped into the sewer system, which is not permitted. These roof drains will have to discharge into the storm system to be piped directly onto the ground. I, impact on city finances and budget. City costs. This development does not impact city finances or budgets. J, other matters as specified by this bylaw. Staff comments, should the restricted use be approved by council, the applicant will be subject to a building permit. The concerns of the derelict buses on the property is a separate matter from the restricted use application being considered. The applicant has made efforts to have the property organized. 2 of the derelict buses were removed, and the applicant is making efforts to remove the remaining buses. The city will address the matter of the derelict buses. The applicant is subject to enforcement under the zoning bylaw and may be subject to penalties as a result of non-compliance. K, other matters as considered relevant. Staff comment, the current water and sewer servicing for the properties would not be allowed today, as multiple properties share the same water and sewer services. Each building, hotel, house, Building A, would have their own water and sewer service sized accordingly for the use of the building and be billed accordingly to the applicable use. The building that will house the proposed restricted use heavy machinery repair shop would be required to have its own water and sewer services and be billed accordingly to the use under the water and sewer bylaw. So the recommendation, city staff support the application from Karen's Motel Inc. to allow a heavy machinery repair shop as restricted use in the single-family residential R1 zone, subject to conditions being applied to the approval. Council should consider but not limited to the following conditions. 1, install a separator, sand, oil, grit in Building A. That would be mandatory. 2, installation of water and sewer service to Building A at the time of land conveyance via a development agreement. 3, consolidation of PID number 863662 and PID number 836288. And 4, paved parking area and storm system and or site drainage plan. Section 10.9 of the bylaw states that all commercial and residential parking lots are to be paved. All other parking lots shall be maintained with a stable surface that prevents the raising of dust or loose particles. As per section 5.10 subsection B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendations, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward to council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, the application received from Karen's Motel Inc. to allow the heavy machinery repair shop as a restricted use within the single-family residential R1 zone be recommended to be approved with conditions by council. And if we could have a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by Ramsey. So we will open the floor. I guess the only question I have is, should the motion not include the conditions that we're proposing?
I guess our point was we just raised some conditions there that would be talked about and have to get finalized, perhaps, so that we didn't.
So the motion that would go to council on the.
Or we'd like to have some dialogue, I guess, on those
Okay.
recommendations. That's why it says limited to these, but we're saying those are some things that came up. We weren't sure if council or planning board had any other thoughts on it, or if they wanted to have any more debate on those types of things that were raised. We just said those are some typical things that we were looked at, and we can pick and choose out of those which ones would be incorporated into the approval.
Okay, we'll get back to that discussion, but we'll open the floor to questions here. First, Councillor Ramsey.
Okay, and I just have a, don't know if it's a question, but I know that Chad Montgomery and Troy came in and spoke initially, and when I was looking over the notes, it seemed that their biggest concern were the derelict buses and children playing on those buses, and it appears that he's gotten rid of a couple of those right now, and he's planning to get rid of, what, is there one more there, Aaron? Is that?
I guess it's the entire bus business, which will lead to not having a need to have any derelict
Apparently
buses.
that's going to be
Yeah.
gone, yeah,
Yes.
but as far as those buses that these gentlemen were concerned about when they came in and spoke on those are gone. And
Some have, and whether there's more or not, as I say, we're trying to deal with, and say there was, it evolved into a bigger, started out with the derelict buses and then turned into the bylaw complaint form and the other uses. So we're
Right.
trying to make sure we were in the middle of this is really step 2 of the restricted use process.
Right.
Which is where we were, and we were still running parallel with the, I'll say the bylaw complaint form issue as far as the derelict buses, but we're still trying to move forward with the restricted use, which now is just limited to the heavy, I'm not sure the proper wording, heavy diesel mechanic shop.
Yeah, okay.
And the buses are not to be part of that property,
Not part of that.
nor the,
Right.
nor the accessory apartment.
Okay.
And I'll just clarify in our report there, it said that the applicant, he agreed once we had the meeting to cease those operations and decommission the apartment. He did come back then and fill out the paperwork to do the decommissioning, what's required. We haven't gone back to inspect that yet, but he has come forward and come in to get the permit to do that work.
Okay, all right, I just know that we have to make a decision, and I just want to be sure
Yep.
that, the residents are happy with what they had requested back in, back in September.
The derelict
so-
buses were there being used buses or parts buses or breakdown buses for the bus business, and the bus business is no longer going to be at this location, so hopefully
Right.
that's going to, and in the meantime, he has gotten back to us since our first meeting that, okay, I've gotten rid of 2 buses, I've got someone else speaking for other buses, so we're going to continue to monitor that process, yeah.
Thank you, Aaron, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor McDougall. Thank you, Councillor Ramsey.
Just a quick question. So this is just for the heavy-duty mechanic shop?
Upon further discussions with him and the issues that were evolved and gonna have to, he said,
Right.
I'm not gonna do those other things there, but I would still like to proceed with the heavy duty.
Okay, that was my confusion.
That evolved into, yeah.
And the older buses, or the surplus buses
To
will
go.
be gone. Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, they're not gone yet, but they are.
Not gone yet,
Correct. Yes.
but it really is a separate issue.
Yes, but it's also, yeah, it was part of the whole.
Councillor Durham.
Thanks, Councillor McFeely. Just one point, I guess, to make. Director Aaron, you had mentioned that when it comes time that council can pick and choose what conditions are applied. I just think it's important that whatever those, if any, end up being, not that this situation will likely ever come up again, but I think we should apply the same conditions to any future. Not like we can just pick and choose for this one and then pick and choose for the next one. I think it
No,
should be
no.
consistent if this ever.
No, we agree. We just didn't, we listed off some things. We thought maybe council or planning board would have some more things that they were thinking that they wanted brought into it. Like, for example, the separator, that's part of our regulations, has to be done. Water and sewer, it's an existing situation where we have back in the day, they would run one sewer in and serve 2 people, now they've created a separate entity out back. So do we want that done now, or are we gonna say, no, it's not an issue, but if we'll put it into a development agreement, if they ever go to sell one of the 3 properties, we make sure that that's registered, so when they go to sell it and their lawyer does a search of the deed, it's attached on there, that they'll have to know full up that you're gonna have to put separate services, and you just can't sell something off and then the services are actually through another property owner. The consolidation of the PIDs, that happened prior to the city. The Quonset Hut and back has its own little survey plan with its own little, no street frontage. So we're saying a new deed would have to be written to encompass it all, but the deed already exists for the entire part. It just says accepting out, and so I mean, that's still an item that has to be done and a cost. The third one is, again, as we mentioned there, it's a debatable one. We have a restricted use, which it could be a permanent thing, but if it stops for a year, it's not. Are we gonna go to the expense of paving the entire parking lot when the business could be there for a year? If it discontinues, it's gone. But we do wanna make sure that there's not an issue there with stormwater running off of there, or dust blowing all over onto the neighbors with traffic coming and going, and, so that's why the topics were there for further discussion.
So that begs the question, I guess, is what of those conditions do we want to include as part of our recommendation to council, planning board? Certainly the separator is mandatory. I don't think that's debatable. The water and sewer,
Are these recommendations coming from?
Yep, the water and sewer is recommended. It's gonna be a challenge to do it now and to say it could be done, but whether you wanna show, it's fine where it exists, but we don't want it to go into different property owners if anything sells. We cover it off by entering into a development agreement. That is one option to make that a remedy if any of the property owners change hands. The lot consolidation, again, as I mentioned, is it's a cost, but it's also a survey that has to be done. We think the survey and description is already done. They're just gonna have to X out where they did the exclusion for the barn in the middle. And the third one is gonna be, or the fourth one's gonna be, yes, it was I'll say a dirt driveway before. This summer they did gravel it, so it's not mud being drug out on a Water Street, on a busy street. But do we want to go to the extent of, for restricted use and saying pave the lot? We're talking heavy types of trucks that are coming and going spring. Are we gonna have, that sort of thing? Are we happy with it? Or are we gonna say that we want the thing, covered? The other criteria says, if it's commercial and residential parking lots are paved, all the other ones maintained with a stable surface. So we ask them then to do it with asphalt millings, which is a lesser cost than the asphalt paving itself, or,
so if I'm hearing correctly, then, condition number 1, yes. Condition number 2 is a development agreement item. There's no cost to the proponent on that. Really, the consolidation you're saying is the survey's done anyways, so.
The original survey was done, the deed was done, but the deed would have said if I owned 50 acres and I took an acre out for you, typically they're leaving the 50-acre deed and they're going accepting out this 1 acre for Councillor McFeely. So the rest of the deed has already been written. They would have to the bulk of the work of that is done, but yes, there still is a work to it.
Okay, so.
We basically have a parcel of land in back that I could buy tomorrow and have no street frontage.
Right.
So it's a landlocked piece of land that we're trying to get tidied up, right?
Yeah, so.
When it's currently owned by the same property owners.
So does planning board agree that we should make that a condition and to tidy that up? Not hearing any negatives, so we'll move forward. And then the big one is the parking lot, because that would be a significant cost to the proponent. And as you say, Aaron, if this was only for a year.
This is not a reason. It's not a full rezoning. It's a restricted use. But if the restricted use lapses for a year, it goes away. So would we incur that cost where they've gone to the trouble now of at least digging it out and graveling so that we're not having mud being dragged out onto Water Street, but we still want to deal with the storm drainage, so it's not stormwater running off of this onto somebody else's property, which we just tried covering off before, right? So whether that means overland drainage swales out to Water Street or, but.
So planning board, then are we comfortable with the recommendation that it would include the first 3 of those conditions?
3 of those conditions, and can there be a conversation regarding the 4th condition?
Absolutely, but I'm saying that may come today or may come the rest through council, through your discussion when you go to have a decision of it at the monthly meeting,
Councilor Deputy Mayor.
I'm not on planning board, but I'm trying to listen really close. With number 4, I guess what I'm wondering about is, you had mentioned, Director Aaron, about it being a year. if after that time, you know, the property owner is there, the business is in full force, is there anything in a development agreement that has like a timeout that after that year they would have to pave?
We could enter into something like that if we can try. They could say if the business is there more than a year or 2 years, you say, yes, you know, it's a viable business. I mean, we understand, like, you know, that's what they're evaluating now
Right.
themselves, I think, is, you know, we heard our discussion with the owners that you've had a chance to have an operation run to see if the business case is there to make it survive at this location or another location that's
Okay.
deemed so.
I guess the reason why I'm bringing up that point is we all remember it now and we're talking about it and it's in the minutes, but if we don't have something that's black and white, 2 years, 3 years down the road, it becomes a bit
Yeah,
gray.
that's what I'm saying.
And it
We're-
needs to be clear.
We're open to suggestions to say, yes, if it's item number 4, that if the business is operating there, whether it be 12 months or 24 months' time, that they be incorporated into making it a hard surface parking lot, you know?
Your worship.
Yeah, just, we're talking there about a water and sewer system, and would that be going in the area that may be paved?
No, right now, what it could be, that's what we're saying, they're gonna do that, they wanna do that first, but
Right, okay.
right now, it comes up between the house and the hotel. But the building out back, the water just comes a line from the house itself. So if I went and bought the house tomorrow, you know, for example, I could just go in there and shut that water off. They have no water back there, and they're trying to, so we're saying that's not an ideal situation, and so we're saying if you make a development agreement that none of those 3 parcels, the hotel, the house, or this building out back could sell, and if they do, they'll have to run services to them as part of that sale.
Okay.
So it will not be into that situation that someone else has a property and they can't get water and we allowed it to happen, or,
This way they wouldn't have to, through you, Mr. Chairman, wouldn't have to tear up the new pavement, put in the water system.
well, that's, we're making the gentleman aware that right now, this is how you're serviced, and, you know.
Thank you.
Okay, so to bring this forward here, or trying to get a head around it here, if I'm hearing correctly, then we sort of support the first 3 conditions and the 4th condition with a time period attached to it. What's the preferred time period, 2 years?
It allows you to know that your business is sustainable and, you know, you can plan for what your expense is gonna be to say,
So that would give
they
them,
have done to a certain part, they have dug it out this year and they have gravelled it. Yeah.
so that would
They may
give
find
them-
if they run there spring and fall, if they're running there, and if you're in wet conditions, it may be desirable to do it prior to that, but it is an expense, yeah.
Yeah, so the wording of that could be, you know, up to 2 years or whatever. Okay, I think so just to bring this closure to this, I guess. So the recommendation, I think, no other lights on, so I think we're ready for the vote. So the planning board recommendation, the application received from Karen's Motel Inc. to allow the heavy machinery repair shop as a restricted use within the single-family residential R1 zone be recommended to be approved with the conditions listed above, and I don't think I need to read those into the motion by council. So that'd be moved, and was moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Ramsey. So
I'm clear on this. So when the resolution comes to council, this will be worded in the resolution.
The conditions will be listed in the recommendation,
Okay, thank
in the resolution that comes to council.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just for clarity, it's November 15th, and the 4th condition would have a time period attached to it.
Of the 2 years, was it?
Yeah. So, planning board? Where'd my member go?
Council, we need your vote. Probably won't need it, but we're gonna hold a vote here.
Okay. Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye,
Contrary? Motion carried.
there you go.
And that concludes the agenda for planning board. So I would ask for a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Ramsey that we adjourn.
Thank you.
Your worship, that
Okay, we'll-
concludes planning board.
Okay, where are we going to now? We're going to, we'll do the committee meetings before the council meetings, right?
Yes, I would like to amend the agenda to move police services to the second item on the agenda, if that's okay.
Is that a friendly agreement?
Is that
Everybody
okay?
agrees to that? Okay, we'll turn it over to Councillor Ramsey, Chair of Police and Fire and Emergency.
Okay, so I believe we'll need our chief of police up here, and
Chief is.
we'll put West on. Okay, so I'll move the second item on police services first, which is the all-night trucking Summerside Port. So I know we have some folks here in the audience who are very interested in this topic this evening, and I know Councillor McFeely put this on the agenda, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey, and I guess I'll begin sort of with full disclosure that I live in the downtown area, and I live very close to the port. So I experience the all-night trucking and so on and so forth, but and it really isn't a bothersome thing for me, so I'll also say that. It is not. So I asked for it to be on the agenda because I know every time there's a ship in you know, this barrage of emails happen and come, and I just think it's time that we have you know, a more public discussion on it. We did have back in early June, I think, a presentation to council, and I think we were committed at that time to try to work with the port to work something out. That and in good faith we had planned to do that, and then we got into the great salt debate, I guess I'll call it, and just didn't think that in the climate that was there at that point in time was a good time to sit down to talk about long-term solutions. But we're past that now, and it's time to kind of begin to move forward here and talk about some long-term solutions. So I asked for it to be on the agenda so we could continue the dialogue and you know, continue a path forward here to get to find a resolution, find the right balance between you know, a working port and the needs and desires and the peace of citizens. And I know other councillors certainly have some thoughts on that, and so really that's why I asked for it to be on the agenda. Is I just thought it was a good time to begin to continue the dialogue and to really try to find a long-term solution, not a knee-jerk reaction, and try to find, you know, work with the port to find the right balance here to as I said earlier, to you know, between the needs of citizens and the needs of the port. So I guess would see that sort of as opening comments. I know others have thoughts on it as well. So Madam Chair, that's sort of why I asked for it to be on the agenda. Personally, as I said, you know, I really want to understand the port side of it. I certainly understand the citizen side of it, and I want to have all the information before we kind of move forward. And you know, if moving forward with you know, a bylaw or taking a look at our existing bylaws that you know, make it more restrictive or whatever, if that's the preferred route, then that's fine. We need to go down that route. But if it's a matter of working with the port to find a solution, then we need to begin to have that you know, that dialogue in a positive way, so we can get the result that everybody wants here. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely, and I think Councillor Snow.
Thank you, Chair. To Councillor McFeely's point, I think it's beyond time that we look at this issue. I know it's one that has been brought to my attention many times, and we had residents in here to present to us, and we did commit to them to meet with the port. And my personal opinion is, I think we sort of dropped the ball a little bit on that because the salt issue was quite a ways down the road. But nonetheless, we're here right now, and we are beyond time to meet with the port and discuss this issue along with other issues. It's no secret that I think our communication with the port has been not efficient over the years, and that needs to improve both for the port and the city, and then also obviously our residents, because we do hear from our residents quite a bit and how the activities down there affect them in the all-night trucking and so on. So I look forward to having productive meetings with the port and looking at possible solutions to this, whether or not it's rerouting trucks or, you know, having a blackout window, or we're not the only working port in Canada or around the world, and I'm sure these issues have come up in other municipalities, and they've either addressed them or said, no, we're not going to address them. But as a municipality, we need to look at all the options on the table and get all the information and then make a decision as a municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Snow. Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. I've been living with this for quite a while because the trucking industry basically goes up South Drive, down West Drive, and you know, when the base left, when the base was here, I never heard the planes. I live off of West Drive and off of South Drive, so I don't really hear them. But it's something like when the base was here, there was always planes going over and you'd never really hear them, right? But now when one goes over, you almost jump out of bed, right? So, but it is an issue, and you know, I spent a lot of time trying to defend the trucking because, just let me go back, and when the loads were coming in on the smaller vessels, we worked with the industry and they tried to offload them in the daytime. But when these larger ships are coming in, they have to stop, load, and get out of there. And that's what really ticked me off the last time. They ran all night and then they stayed in port for 2 days. So I'm not sure why they had to unload that right away. But I think it's time. We need to sit down with not only the port, but the developers who are hauling whether it's salt or whether it's gravel. We need to sit down with them in the trucking industry and see if we can come up with some kind of an arrangement. You know, when the wheels are turning, that's development, but it bothers a lot of people. And, you know, I've spent all my career with talking about ditches and talking about trucking, and it's not an easy thing to talk about because you know, if it goes daytime, we don't have an issue with it. But the last time, and I just got a call today, we put a speed sign up on West Drive. When the trucks were going out, they were all 50 to 60, not a problem. When they were coming back unloaded, they were all flying. And this is all night too, right? So it is an issue for, you know, I know right from the port right in. And I don't know what the answer is, but we need to get around the table with the industry and see what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you,
McCollum.
Chair Barb, Councillor Barb. I guess being the councillor for the downtown ward, many of the residents, and again, it impacts all of the councillors with people that all live along that Water Street, East and West Core. I think, you know, we're very aware of the fact that we do have a trucking association, that a lot of our food, a lot of things do come in through the bridge. And because the port is a working port, that is something that we have known. But I think what has really escalated this matter is the fact that the city has been working very hard these years to try and revitalize our downtown and gain the fact of having residents living in the downtown area or in that core district. And I think it's just been something that has been waiting to happen. And with the, you know, the heavy traffic from the Port Authority, it's just been on a course. I don't think the city has dropped the ball on it in a sense. I think it was something that was created as the residents began to move downtown, because we now have a number of buildings down there that weren't there a number of years ago. So we're trying to rectify that because we're now faced with that issue. The other thing that I think is a real concern for people is the loss of sleep, quiet enjoyment, why they've moved to the city, those kinds of things, and they're all important. But as the leaders that have been elected to represent the city and our residents, we have to find that balance, and we also need to have that business coming in and the development. So we've got to try and listen to all sides of the matter that's happening, and try to remember too that with all of the trucking traffic, we spend a great deal of our capital project budget on road infrastructure. So it's also impacting on those kinds of things. So I think it's very important for us to put our heads together and really try to work at resolving this in a very respectful manner. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and Your Worship, yes.
Just a couple of questions, and now we have our acting chief here. And Bruce, Councillor McDougall mentioned about the truckers speeding more so probably when they're empty or on their way back for another load. And did you have any speeding tickets issued as a result of what may have happened? I don't know if you...
Well, I think first of all, there's always continuous enforcement while the trucks are being unloading. We do South Drive, we do West Drive. We've got flashing speed signs now on Water Street traveling west. We've got flashing speed signs traveling east. We have flashing speed signs on South Drive as well. We now have one on West Drive. We're, as far as West Drive goes, I think you'll find there's a tremendous amount of enforcement on that street.
A lot of tickets issued on that street.
Pardon me?
Last couple of weeks ago, you had mentioned one of the meetings about a number of speeding tickets issued.
Yes, and they continue. Yeah. So, I mean, we're doing what we can with the laws that we're provided with.
Just to follow up to you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
The federal regulations for so many hours for a truck driver to drive, right, whether it's 12 or 13 per day, is that a federal regulation only? Can that be incorporated? Maybe our lawyer, is Gordon still with us? Can that be enforced, or could that be put within a city bylaw and have it enforced, or?
That was something for legal service to look at.
Pardon?
Yeah. Yeah, we don't enforce that.
I know that, but I mean, if, does Charlottetown or New Glasgow or some other place, or Halifax with a port, do they enforce those kinds of regulations? And number one, and number two, you'd need an awful lot of staff to determine whether somebody is 12 hours up or 13, whatever the federal law is, to drive when there's long hauls. I guess that's the idea of that. Would that be worth even considering, or getting some information to see if any municipalities have that kind of a regulation in a bylaw? And if they did, could it even be enforced? And what would the human resources need to be in order to enforce it? I'm just thinking out loud here, I guess.
Well, I think as far as enforcement under the federal law for them, they have what they call a tachometer on those trucks, as well as they used to keep logbooks, but they have a meter now that actually collects the information as how much time the truck's been on the road.
Is it the truck or the driver?
Well, it's in the vehicle itself.
Yeah. They can apparently stop the vehicle.
And the information's there for them, for the enforcement people.
So I guess I'm listening to what we're not saying here. It's not possible for the city to have something like that in our bylaw, or not practical? Is that what we're all saying here?
I think Your Worship, I think the elephant in the room is that the trucks are driving all night long. I think I don't think there's any other problem. There's obviously a speeding problem with vehicles, and there's, we do the best we can with that. But I think the problem is they're running after 11 o'clock at night, 10:30 at night, all through the night. And I think that's what people have the biggest concern about. And I think that's what we have to look at, whether we put a bylaw out there, whether we meet with the port and say, like, what kind of an agreement can we come up with where these trucks aren't going all night long? So people can sleep, because really, I think that's the whole problem. I don't think there's anything besides that.
That's the reason I'm sort of asking that question.
Yeah.
There's not much sense of putting something into a bylaw that we can't enforce.
But I think if it's a bylaw, we can, as far as our hours of operation, right? Can we not, like, you don't think we can? Pardon me? I'm sorry.
We'd have to take a look at that.
Right. But I think that's the biggest concern here. If there's something we can do about that,
If I could just sum up then. and then I'll let
absolutely.
others, But the night of the salt unloading, I was talking with your police station that night at 1:30 in the morning or something, and the lady at the dispatcher was very cooperative, and she was talking with her supervisor, and she had the bylaw there, and she said, snow removal, you can't, you can do that, and a commercial business, and she said the port is a commercial business, so there's nothing more we can enforce. So if we're gonna change the bylaw or do something about the bylaw or put something in it, we want to be 100% sure that it has some teeth in it, just not to do a bylaw to say that we did a bylaw. And I understand, like Bruce said, truckers have to make a living, and they need the gravel in the streets and the salt to salt the highways in the wintertime and those kinds of things, but it's the noise and the hours that's the biggest problem here. And obviously, some overflow off of the trucks from the salt and the truck turns and those kinds of things from the street corners. But if we're going to do anything with the bylaw, let's try to have it where it can be enforced and taken a lot of things into consideration. I'll keep quiet for now.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I think Councillor Snow.
I just want to clarify something, because when Councillor McColeman spoke, she insinuated that when I said drop the ball, I meant not as a city, I meant we dropped the ball, not setting up the meeting prior to this, that we had the salt issue, but there was a ton of time there when we met with the residents that came presented, and we did commit to them that we would meet with the port to discuss their issues that they brought forward, and we didn't do that. Then we ended up with the salt issue, so I think there was enough time in there that we could have met with the port.
I don't know where you'd find the time where you had meetings every second day.
I think there's lots of time. I think history will prove that the relationship with the port and the city has been less than positive over the years, and there's been zero communication with the port and the city. So I think that's a major.
Because he's been in contact with them, trying back and forth.
I think that's a major issue that we're into right now, is we have no communication with the port, zero communication with the port, and anytime we do try to meet with them, we can't meet. So that's how everything is reared its head in regards to salt. If we really want to look at the history, we tried to meet with the port before the salt issue became public, and we couldn't set up a meeting. So, I mean, we're all busy and we all live busy lives, but there's important things that have to be meet on. To that point,
I want to speak to that, correct some of your
yeah, just a sec. Rob, you had mentioned that we have to look at, but I didn't know what we had to look at. If you could just clarify what you were making.
Yeah, I think going back to Councillor Ramsey's point, like the question was posed, like, are there certain restrictions that we can put in the bylaw around the hours of operation for these trucking companies going back and forth?
Okay.
And I said that's something that we would have to look at,
Okay.
right, just from a legal perspective. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the other piece here is that, and I know we've been talking about trying to meet with the port. Yeah, I would agree that communication between the city and the port could be better. And after the residents had the opportunity to present to council back in June, we certainly undertook to try to engage with the port on this. They do struggle with trying to strike a balance between their responsibilities as a working port versus what the needs and expectations are of residents in terms of peace and enjoyment. And we've had some ongoing discussions with them about that. We have gotten into a situation over the last couple of months when we were dealing with the salt issue. But I will tell you that I've had some recent discussions with the port, and they are very open to wanting to dialogue on this particular topic. And I think it's a case of getting the city and the port board around the table to really just understand both sides of the issue and see if there's a way in which we can come up with a solution that works for everybody.
Yeah, I just want to mention there that I know our CEO has been trying to get in contact with the port CEO a number of times back and forth, and there was some time he wasn't hearing back, and those kinds of things. So there has been a try all the time, and then this salt thing, it took a couple of months to finally get it sorted out, and this finally found a location for it. But it takes a lot of time to work through these things, and I know personally I was on the phone a lot and talking with people and trying to get it sorted out, and I know councillors who were very concerned with the calls they got about it, and emails and texts and everything else. So, but to get back to the bylaw, we got to, if we're going to do something, let's try and get something that we can make it enforceable. That's all I have.
Can I just finish, because I was sort of interrupted there.
That wasn't an interruption. That was a comment on that you had to be corrected on.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
All right, then, well, we had a meeting with the residents in June, and we had meetings in August, June, July, August, September, and somehow we couldn't find a time to meet with the port. Like, I'm sorry, that's...
I don't remember you asking me to arrange for a meeting. I tried every second day.
Excuse, I'm saying we committed to the residents who came and presented. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
They came, presented, we said we would meet with the port.
Right.
That was in June, and we're saying we couldn't find time to meet with them over the summer.
Not that we couldn't. We just couldn't get a connection for them to
Right,
meet with.
or they couldn't. I
That's what I'm
agree.
saying,
That's
yes.
exactly what I'm saying. The communication with one of the biggest industries in our city, the city was built around the port. That's where cities are built around. And yet we can't have a communication with the port. Like, we still haven't, we went through this, we went through the salt, and somehow we have still not met with the port. I find
I
that...
can't understand why you're pointing your fingers at council when we tried so hard.
I'm saying us, the port, the city. The fact that we cannot find time to meet is ridiculous.
We can find the time.
Okay, the
We
fact
gotta
that
meet
they
with
cannot
somebody.
find time to meet with us.
Well, that's a
Sure,
better statement.
but we all have to take ownership. That's all I'm saying. We should have been able to meet with the port by now. So if it's not on us, I didn't want to point fingers at the port. Somebody didn't want to meet.
Anyway, go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor McFeely.
Yeah, just to try to find a path forward, a positive path forward here. I think we should have a two-pronged approach to move this forward. I think we should assign the all-night trucking issue to the Policy and Bylaw Review Committee and ask for a report back to council within 60 days. And we should formally request a meeting with the Port Authority within the next 30 days. And try to move this forward in a positive way. So we're not going to resolve the issue here tonight. We need to define a path forward. And I think we need to explore what the bylaw options are, and at the same time explore how we move forward with the port to resolve some of the issues that are out there. So I would propose that we sort of take those two actions
Those
tonight
two
to
actions.
advance this.
I have them written down. I will
So
do that.
request the meeting,
Oh,
was that to request the meeting in 30 days or to have the meeting? To have the meeting.
Can I just...
okay. No, I was just gonna...
I'll just be short because I want to, on Brian's comments. I think we're talking about the port. We should be talking about the industry because it's been going on for years. The trucking, we need to talk to the industry. The port was the one that put the salt in the wound here lately, but it has been going on. And the thing that bothers me is we get an email about 20 after 4 on Fridays that they're gonna be going all night over the weekend. And that's wrong. And that's not because our CAO is getting it sent. Our CAO is just finding out about it at that time. And so how can you react?
Well, that's another group we need to meet.
Yeah, so I think we need to meet with the port and the other, you know, there's the fertilizer, the other contractors. There's fertilizer, there's the cement, there's the gravel, yeah. There's a number of them, and we need to talk to them all, because, yeah, and I think they all should be at the initial meeting, so.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
just,
thank
I'll just get Councillor, Deputy Mayor McColman.
I just want to go back to a couple of points that were made. I think there's issues and interests on both sides of this. Residents, the city, the Port Authority. And that communication piece that's missing is that we do need to come together. I think we need to be a bit more firm in how we present this. We're trying to collaborate, and that's very important. But there are some things that I think we keep talking around it, but this is really important. We talk about the bylaw. We have bylaws there to help enforce when there's a need. And the need that has escalated, if we would just put our lens on and focus on it for a moment, is we're dealing with an industry. We're dealing with a working port. We can't change that, and we want to work with people. But the bylaw that we need to look at, or adding to the bylaw, and I am sure there are other municipalities, we have people that have moved here from other provinces and states that have run into that. They've experienced it, and other places have found solutions. I think what we're dealing with is that the residents are coming with what their thoughts are, because the disruption is affecting their quality of life. We have pushed to get people living downtown, and we have to be the body as a corporation to see that that is made possible, that people are not disrupted through the night. Our bylaw can have teeth in it. And that's up to us, I believe, that we need to put the teeth in it. We need to research that there's other municipalities that have this in place. We can work with a working port, but we have got to have some things that will not disrupt the quality of life for people. The other thing that creates a problem for people, that from anybody that I've heard, and all of you have as well, is the spillover with not having coverage over the trucks, because that gives a lot more noise happening rolling down the streets when they're going. So those are the things that I think, and Councillor McFeely, I respect you immensely, but I really think 30 days and 60 days are too long to take a look at this. I think we really need to act a little bit quicker.
Well, I think the bylaw review piece would take, based on my experience dealing with bylaw review in the last council, it just takes a little bit of time, so I'd rather do it right than do it rushed on the bylaw side of it. So it would take some time. I mean, they don't meet daily. So I think 60 days is a reasonable amount of time for the bylaw side of it if we're looking for a long-term solution. I would agree. I mean, if the parties are available to meet sooner than 30 days, that's fine too. I'm not hung up on the date for that, but I just know the bylaw work takes time.
But I guess if I may just rebut 1 second on that is, again, I do respect your thoughts on that, but I'm thinking this is a new problem that has been created. So I think we have to also take a leadership role in trying to find some way of wording that bylaw. And I think globally and with technology, we can find all kinds of research that will help support what we're trying to do.
I understand what you're saying, but I still think, I think 60 days is a reasonable amount of time to do a complete and thorough bylaw review, bring something back to council for consideration, and get feedback from council, go back, do the edits they need to do, and bring it back for approval. I don't know how you do it less than 60 days.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I just quickly wanted to say, so we will take it back to bylaw policy review and in a timely fashion, but also we have to remember, as people have said, there's the noise, the nuisance bylaw, and that in that it refers to 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. for construction sites, which is an industry, which has an association the same as this. So I would be hard pressed to see why it's any different. So we'll take that back and then we'll have the discussion for sure.
Thank you, Councillor Adams and Your Worship.
Okay, in order to arrange these meetings, we would, rather than 9 councillors run around trying to arrange a meeting, we'd ask our CAO, Rob, or his designate, excuse me,
Yeah.
to arrange for those meetings. And it's not going to be easy to try to get a date that's convenient for everybody, because councillors work and members of the public would want to attend, and the industry. So we'll leave the task, I guess, to Rob to see if he can arrange a meeting. And I think it was suggested here that it be a public meeting. Whether that could be held here, I'm not sure with COVID regulations how many people would be allowed, but we've got lots of space someplace if it's required. And when you say the industries, we're talking the trucking industry too, I believe you had mentioned?
So, yeah,
sorry.
I think meet with the people, the port, and the industry, whether it be, you know, the truckers and as Carrie just pointed out, you know, the construction, the contractors who are out there working, you know, like whoever needs to be at the meeting, I think
it needs to be the contractors. The truckers don't really need to be there because it's the industry that's gonna hire the truckers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And will the residents be there? Will they be invited?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and if the residents have anything that they need to say this evening as they see us go through this dilemma, feel free to take the mic and just give us your name and your address and let us know what you're thinking. And that can happen now if there's anyone that would like to have a few things to say, or do you think we got the message and we're moving forward with it? That's entirely up to you, Kathleen.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on June 1st. I think you've covered off the points. I think there's been some good discussion tonight, and that's encouraging. But I will say, in the early parts of the discussion, it was all talk about a working port and business concerns. Let's not forget the residents. That's why we're here. That's why we're pushing forward. If we're not in this city to do some good, what are we here for? There is a balance. It can be achieved, and it's taken too long. As to the CAO setting up a meeting, thank you for your efforts, but it should never take this long. I've worked in municipal services elsewhere, and I've never seen a CAO directed to set up a meeting with parties June 1st, and we are past November 1st with no action. And that's not acceptable. That's not a timeline that's acceptable. So I think we have a noise bylaw that needs amendments. I think you nailed that. And thank you, Corey, and thank you, Carrie, who have been corresponding, as well as Mayor Stewart. And we look for a good resolution. The very least we can expect for our tax dollars is a good night's sleep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathleen. And so, I guess, in conclusion, if I don't see any more lights on, CAO Rob will propose that the bylaw review committee within a 60-day period meet with the port sometime within a 30-day period and sooner if possible, like the closest we can get to that. As well, with that meeting, we'd have the trucking industry and the residents and maybe our police services and you know, everybody there that can make a difference. It's all about making a difference and making a change and trying to keep everybody happy. So with that, I'll close this meeting. I don't see any lights. So I'll adjourn.
Just make a final comment.
I'm sorry, Your Worship.
And then we'll move on. But in this business, I've been around it for a couple of weeks, and once in a while things fall out of the sky you can't see coming, like the salt issue this fall. And apparently that's over a strike or something in Nova Scotia, wherever they prepare it, and that happened, and that's why all of a sudden all of the salt for the island, I guess, was going to be down here, and it was all arranged before anybody in here knew anything about it. So that nobody saw that coming until we started seeing the 8 feet high walls going up, and then we started to check into it. So things happen, and you have to deal with it, and we'll deal with this the best we can. I guess that's the best to say. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I won't adjourn this meeting yet because I have West Drive speeding update, and I think Sinclair, or Chief Walker, you're going to give us an update on that.
Sure. Well, I think since our last meeting, you all know that the flashing speed sign has gone in place. Tomorrow morning, I was talking to Tech Services, hopefully the traffic unit counter will go in place just to see how effective the speed sign actually is. It's good to know as well is that the fact that the speed sign itself, it collects information as well. So we can look at it. So we'll be able to tell, the traffic going west, how effective it was. So once we get that once we get that information back, then of course we'll share it.
It's all computerized. You get a printout afterwards. Is that
We
what you're
can,
saying?
on that speed sign we can.
Yeah, great.
Great. Councillor
Thank
McDougall.
you. Thank you, Sinclair. I've very pleased to see the sign go up, or the flashing sign. And I went over last week and I sat at the end of Curran Drive just to watch that thing light up. And I sat there for probably 15 to 20 minutes, and the bulk of them, very few of them didn't see that word on the bottom. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right, but there was, if I was to take an average, I would say between 58 and 65 was a lot of them. There was some that was just 52, 53, but there was a couple over the 72, right? And that was my 15 to 20 minutes sitting there. It seemed to me like the ones coming from west were going faster, but it's hard to tell when they're trucks because they sound like they're going faster. But before I come in today, I received an update from Sarah, who was here at our last meeting, and I'd just like to read her email into the record if I could.
Sure.
She said, "Hope you're all well, and as a follow-up to our last conversation, I wanted to let you know our observation since the flashing sign went up. It is very interesting to see how many people are speeding. Every few cars are going 60 or over, and we've seen some going 80 to 100. I feel a little better knowing that I was just not exaggerating. Since the sign has gone up, we've noticed most people are not reducing speed and don't seem to be concerned going over 70. In fact, yesterday morning, a young lady was traveling over 70 and then almost failed to stop for the school bus. Some will slow down towards the flashing sign, but most don't. Those who do are often being passed by other cars behind them who don't want to slow down. Passing cars has increased, I'd say, which, by the way, is just crazy. Police presence has decreased, but I've seen them there still, but with the sign there, they're probably, yeah. But anytime they are there, they're catching people. And the first ships that came in, and while most were going 50 to 60, on the way down to Kernan Briggs, they were racing back once unloaded to make up time. And she said, I know, that's crazy. So that's the other part is to do with South Drive, and we had talked about South Drive last week on that. The principal at Greenfield is putting someone out at the crosswalk just to see how many kids are going across. They think there's almost need for an attendant there now. So we'll probably be hearing more back from Greenfield on that at a later date. So I just wanted to read that into the meeting. But yeah, so I know it's going to be better. We'll have to, I think we should put this back on for our next month's meeting because you're going to have the reports back on the speed since they're in there. And I know that I had a couple of suggestions that we had talked about the last time, is the speed, reducing the speed limit to 40, which nobody wants to see. But I also have a thought in my head that we should, if trucking is gonna still be an issue, that if we have no through trucking, if the trucking can go from from south down to Kearns, that's as far as they need to go. They can go from Kearns to south, they can go the other way. But it just means that they can't go through to the base. When they come back from the base, they're coming straight down the Military Road, got a little turn, and then they're into West Drive and they're sailing. But if they have to go around, then they got the light to deal with. The other part was we were going to check with the province on the lights at South and the all-weather highway, and I'm not sure if anybody has checked into that yet, but I'd like to follow up on that if I could. Anyway.
What's the problem with there?
Well, the turning light, there's no turning light when you're coming west into South Drive, so the trucks don't really get down there because they gotta wait at the light. They can't pull around, right? And it just, that intersection should be reviewed right now. It's
Sounds
an
like you're
older-
talking
Okay.
traffic circle here.
I don't want, no, I didn't say traffic circle. I'm scared to mention look at it, so.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. And if that's, I don't see any more lights. Thank you, Chief Walker, for coming in and helping us and understand a little better. So with that, this police services meeting is adjourned.
Okay, thank you, and we'll continue on. We're back to tech services. Councillor Drawn?
I think if possible, we'd probably all agree to do the special council meeting, since it's before tech services anyway. I think we have some folks here that are waiting for items in that.
Okay,
agenda.
we'll go back to the special council meeting. But, okay, we'll call the special council meeting to order, and we have, can you believe it, 12 resolutions. So, the resolutions, I believe, under Councillor Brian McFeely. Starting, I believe.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I have 4 of those 12 here, so we'll move through them. Moved by myself, Councillor McFeely, seconded by Councillor Barb Ramsey, resolution number COS 21-178. Whereas an application was received from Julie Hall and Mike Martin for a restricted use to allow a dwelling unit in an agricultural building at 705 Water Street East, PID number 72397, in the agricultural A zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. Be resolved that council approve a restricted use for a dwelling unit in an agricultural building at 705 Water Street East, PID number 72397, in the agricultural A zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And this bears the recommendation of Planning Board meeting on October 27th, 21, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by Councillor Ramsey. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary nay. Carried unanimously.
The second resolution, Your Worship, is COS 21-179, moved by myself, Councillor McFeely, seconded by Councillor Barb Ramsey, whereas an application was received from Natalie and Jim Clark for a discretionary use for PID number 310516 to allow an apartment building up to 4 units at 92 Summer Street in its medium-density residential R3 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. Be resolved that council approve a discretionary use for an apartment building, 4 units at 92 Summer Street, PID number 310516 in the medium-density residential R3 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And this bears the recommendation of Planning Board meeting October 27th, 2021, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by Councillor Ramsey. Any questions on the resolution? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary nay. Carried.
Third resolution I have, Your Worship, is resolution number COS 21-180, moved by myself, Councillor McFeely, seconded by Councillor Kerry Adams. Whereas an application was received from the Boys and Girls Club of Summerside for a discretionary use PID number 303 792 to allow a group home at 90 Cedar Street in the medium-density residential R3 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. Be resolved that the council approve a discretionary use for a group home at 90 Cedar Street, PID number 303792, in the medium-density residential R3 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, and this bears the recommendation of the Planning Board meeting of October 27th, 2021.
Moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by Councillor Adams. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay. Carried. You're batting 1,000
Not there
so far.
yet. We're not quite there yet. Resolution COS 21-181, moved by myself, Councillor McFeely, seconded by Councillor Kerry Adams. Whereas an application was received from the Boys and Girls Club of Summerside for a discretionary use for PID number 303800 to allow a group home at 97 Cedar Street in the medium-density residential R3 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. Be resolved that the council approve a discretionary use for a group home at 94 Cedar Street, PID number 303800, in the medium-density residential R3 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, and this bears the recommendation of the Planning Board meeting on October 27, 2021.
Moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by Councillor Adams. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay. Carried. Okay.
Now it's done.
So you still have a few more resolutions?
That's it for,
I believe,
that's it for me anyways.
Councillor, Deputy Mayor, you have the resolutions next?
Oh, yes, I do, sir.
I think. Power transformer, is that the electrical, is it? Or you-
Yes, I'll do the electric services, or maybe I'll do the finance.
Well, whichever one, whatever you want, just tell me the resolution number and we'll follow along it.
Thank you. I just do have, it's finance, and I will give a very brief explanation to council and our residents as to why. On September the 18th, 2021, the City of Summerside passed a resolution to award long-term financing to TD Canada Trust, and this resolution needs to be amended for two reasons. The term for one loan was listed as 10 years in error and should have been listed as 5 years. And point number two, the repayment start date has been updated to be December 1st, 2021 from October 1st, 2021, as the loan proceeds have not been drawn down yet from the financial institution. So I will read that revision. Resolution COS 21-189, moved by myself.
189. Sorry.
You got it?
Yes.
Moved by myself, Deputy Mayor Norman McColman, seconded by Vice Chair Councillor Brian McFeely. Whereas the City of Summerside borrows from financial institutions to finance the cost of a portion of its capital expenditures from the previous fiscal year and/or refinance existing loans that have come due. Be it resolved that Council authorizes the following amendments to Resolution COS 21-157, which was passed on September 13th, 2021. The term of loan for the loan amount of $8,322,300. The term of the loan is 5 years and not 10 years as noted on Resolution COS 21-157. The method of repayment, interest only until November 30th, 2021, beginning in December 2021, equal blended monthly payments including principal and interest. This replaces the following, which was listed on Resolution COS 21-157. Interest only until September 30th, 2021. Beginning in October 2021, equal blended monthly payments included principal and interest. The City of Summerside is able to incur the indebtedness and liability as set out above. The loan total, $12,410,900, will not cause the City of Summerside to exceed its debt limit as set out in the Municipal Government Act, Part 3, Division 3, Section 164, Section or Clause 3. The security required for this borrowing transaction is the appropriate borrowing resolution and related documentation. This bears the recommendation of the Finance Committee meeting as of August 26, 2021.
Moved by Deputy Mayor McColman and seconded by Councillor Brian McFeely. You've all heard the resolution. Any questions? All in favour say aye. Contrary nay. Carried.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So we're still working our way up from the bottom? We're starting at the top? Okay.
I am
Resolution number-
doing the resolutions for the electric utility on behalf of our chair, Councillor Greg Campbell, who has laryngitis.
So we're back up to, starting at Resolution 5, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, just give me the correct number when you read it. 182, is it?
Yes,
Yes.
182. Okay, it was moved by Councillor Greg Campbell, and it's resolution number COS 21-182, seconded by Vice Chair Norma McColman. And whereas tenders were called in 2021 SE001 power transformer, and whereas the City of Summerside received 7 tender bids in good order as follows. Firm Transmag Energy, $1,159,703.70. Taikai Canada, $1,175,783. Shinlin Electric, $1,264,974.70. ASCO Corporation Limited, $1,466,250. Delta Star Transformer Incorporated, $1,495,549.70. PTI Transformers Incorporated, $1,498,145.25. And Hyundai Canada, $1,656,000. Be it resolved that the City of Summerside awards the power transformer tender to Transmag Energy for the value of $1,159,703.70. This bears the recommendation of the Committee of Electric Services.
Moved by Councillor Campbell and seconded by Deputy Mayor McColman. And just like $500,000 seems to be quite a difference in the tenders, on $1.5 million a tender. But anyway, the lowest one obviously needed. Any further questions on the resolution?
Yep.
Go ahead, Councillor Snow, and then
I'm just curious, is this, does it meet our budgeted amount? Is this a budgeted item?
That was my question actually to Deputy Mayor. I was going to ask if since they're here, the staff is here, if they could tell us on each one of those, because you have a number, if they were
Great.
And that's my question as well.
Okay,
Okay.
there you go.
Good question.
is our electrical engineer here? Our electrical engineer, Greg Goody.
Thank you.
The floor is yours, sir. And check your mic there, make sure it's on.
Sure.
So Director
Yeah.
Gray,
Test,
the
test,
first
yeah, okay.
one.
So this is part of the larger project of the Summerside Sun Bank. So this is all the equipment, you're going through the resolutions today. That portion, the project portion to get the substation ready to connect the large solar and battery construction we're doing on Bayview Drive in the Wellfield site. That budget overall for that expansion was $4 million in that larger project of $65.8 million. And this particular resolution you're going through with this tender equipment works out to about I think I put an email into His Worship about this is actually a part of that $4 million, and it tallies about $1.25 million in total when you add in all the resolutions. That leaves another approximately $2.7 million that are left for construction. And there's also another one, I believe, on the list for civil works that just closed for $918,000.
So it's within budget, so I guess was the question.
Overall, yes, it's part of the $4 million for that, and we're managing the budget in pieces until we believe with these prices coming in that we'll definitely be able to meet the $4 million slice of budget for that substation in the overall project scope.
Any further questions for the electrical engineer? I do not see any lights on. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary nay. Carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just wanted to clarify, with Director Gregg. If there's any other questions, would you be able to answer? Just, thank you. The next resolution is COS 21-183, moved by Councillor Greg Campbell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Norma McColman. Whereas tenders were called for in 2021 SE Summerside Electric 002 72.5 kV breaker, and whereas the City of Summerside received 4 tender bids in good order as follows, and I'll read each firm and amount. ASCO Corporation Limited, $80,500. Siemens, cost $112,759.80. Taikai Canada, $136,947.75, and the last firm, Holland Power, $139,708.90. Be it resolved that the City of Summerside awards the 72.5 kV breaker tender to ASCO Corporation Limited for the value of $80,500. This bears the recommendation of the Committee of Electric Services.
Moved by Councillor Greg Campbell, Electrical Chair, and seconded by Deputy Mayor McColman. Any questions? You had a further comment where you're going to speak? Okay. Any questions on the resolution? These 4 resolutions, Mr. Goody, the total that you just mentioned, they'll be under the total of 4. Okay, thank you, within the budget. Thank you very much. No, I guess just got it. Unless, Deputy Mayor, did you have a question for him?
No, did you have something you wanted?
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Contrary, nay. Carried.
Okay, the next resolution is COS 21-184, moved by Councillor Greg Campbell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Norma McColman. Whereas tenders were called for in 2021 Summerside Electric SE 003 metering unit, and whereas the City of Summerside received 2 tender bids in good order as follows. Firm number 1, Artec, cost and the taxes included $32,226.45, and Artec $38,381.25. Be it resolved that the City of Summerside awards the metering unit tender to Artec for the value of $38,381.25. This bears the recommendation of the Committee of Electric Services.
Moved by Councillor Greg Campbell and seconded by Deputy Mayor McColman. Any questions on the resolution? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Contrary, nay. Carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, we just have a few more. Resolution COS 21-185, moved by Councillor Greg Campbell, seconded by myself, Deputy Mayor McColman. Whereas tenders were called for the 2021 SE 004 potential transformers, and whereas the City of Summerside received 3 tender bids in good order as follow. The firms are Artec, cost and taxes included $20,858.70. ASCO Corporation Limited, $31,740, and Carlton and Connolly, $33,644.40. Be it resolved that the City of Summerside awards the potential transformer tender to Artec for the value of $20,858.70.
Moved by Councillor Greg Campbell and seconded by Deputy Mayor McColman. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay. Carried.
Your Worship, I just want to repeat something on that resolution. I said the wrong amount. It is $20,858.70.
Right, yeah. That's what's written there too. Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Do you have any further at this time?
Yes, I do, Your
Yes, with
Worship.
that, Jim.
Now, I know why Councillor Gregg asked me to do this. You owe me. Resolution COS 21-186, moved by Councillor Greg Campbell, seconded by Deputy Mayor Norma McColman. Whereas tenders were called for in 2021 Summerside Electric 005 recloser, and whereas the City of Summerside received 2 tender bids in good order as follows. Firm R.L. Dennis, cost and taxes included, $35,753.50. Holland Power, $64,509.25. Be it resolved that the City of Summerside awards the recloser tender to R.L. Dennis for the value of $35,753.50. This bears the recommendation of the Committee of Electric Services.
Moved by Councillor Greg Campbell and seconded by Deputy Mayor McCollum. Any questions on the resolution? Councillor Snow.
Just a comment, I guess, when you look at those two amounts, and I'm looking at a resolution coming next, where it's double, so I guess I'll get to my point when the next resolution comes, but it's concerning when you're seeing two resolution and they come up double the other.
And the one I mentioned at the beginning was of $1.5 million, there was $500,000 in the difference. But anyway, it is what it is.
I think almost every resolution we went through tonight is almost doubled at one point. So
But
it's
we
strange.
took the lowest though.
And we take the lowest, yes, but it's interesting how there can be such a variance. Anyway.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary nay. Carried.
Thank you, Worship. Okay, there's just two more remaining.
Just.
Resolution numbers are COS 21-187. Moved by Councillor Greg Campbell, seconded by Deputy Mayor McCollum. Whereas tenders were called for in 2021, Summerside Electric SE 006 Substation Expansion Civil Works, and whereas the City of Summerside received one tender bid in good order as follows. The firm, Rising Edge, cost and taxes included, $1,048,819.57. Be it resolved that the City of Summerside awards the substation expansion civil works tender to Rising Edge for the value of $1,048,819.57. This bears the recommendation of the Committee of Electrical Services.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Greg Campbell and seconded by Deputy Mayor McCollum. And Councillor Snow, you have a question? Your lights on. And McKay.
There was a reason why I mentioned it earlier, I guess. How do we know that this is not a $600,000 job being quoted for $1 million?
A great question. So when we got the one bid, it was disappointing for sure. So what we did is we went out to a tender for similar work last year, and we had 6 bids, and Rising Edge was in that mix. And when we evaluated those at that time, they were the second lowest price at that time. We also then went and checked with our engineering firm we have hired to assist with the design of the project with other work in the Maritimes, and whether or not it was in that area of pricing for the work for what they've been seeing in other jobs, and they said it's a reasonable price. So with that, we felt comfortable putting it forward with that review and research, rather than just saying, coming up and doing no research at all or trying to vet the price.
Thank you. Councillor McFeely and then Councillor McDougall.
Yeah, well, kind of here we go again, one bid. And we talked about this before in other tenders, that we're only receiving one bid in a number of tenders this year, and it's very concerning because it almost goes against the sort of the purpose of tendering in many ways. But you comment, Greg, that there was similar work done last year and there were 6 bidders?
There was, yeah.
And we only had one bid this year?
Correct.
Like, is there a reason for that?
I'm hearing in the industry they're very busy. I know this particular company, in discussion with them on their tender package to us, we always asked them about local subcontracting and companies. He reached out to 3 local firms to help with the civil work, and all of them declined. I won't say who, but one actually told him that he could give him a price, but he's not sure he could get it done, and the price would be astronomical. So he's actually bringing in resources from New Brunswick to help him with some of the civil work. This company's actually from Newfoundland. So that's how tough it is for work out there, and there's a lot of work going on right now, and it seems like all the resources are getting used up pretty heavily.
No, and I'm certainly aware of that from other files that I'm involved in, and dealing with this very same thing, one response to tenders.
Staff definitely understands when we come to council with one tender that we need to do some due diligence on vetting that number And we do try to do the best we can by using industry standards on other jobs that have closed recently. And if we don't have good information on that, we'll reach out to engineering firms and try to help to see what they've seen.
So you're comfortable that we're not being overpriced here in this?
We are, yeah,
Okay,
much
thank
as
you.
I can
Thank you.
research.
We are comfortable, you mean?
Correct, yes. And it's also within the overall scope of the project budget. We feel comfortable with that.
Greg?
There's another question.
Greg, just, I know when we started first, you said there was an overall budget, and these all fell within it. So in the grand scheme of things, where did you think this was coming in at? 600, 800, or?
We figured close to about 850 to 900,
Okay.
so it's that, they actually come in at 918, and then the taxes brought it to 1,048,000. That's a tax included price on the
Okay.
document.
We
so-
get the HST returned.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
You're
we're
just
supposed
trying to make us feel good.
Yeah, so the,
All right.
but the overall thing is there will be a couple more packages go out for this work. There's still the electrical work to do and then the controls work on that. So there's still some other resolutions that'll come towards council as part of the bigger picture that's not all wrapped into that one larger contract with Aspen Chem.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And you had mentioned, and we have dealt with this over the last couple of years, where some projects are only getting one bid. And some of the cases, and we can understand that, there's so much work going on, that was some of the reason. And I talked with the Atlantic mayors last week in Charlottetown. You know, other municipalities had the same sort of situation to deal with so much work going on. I don't think anybody was complaining about, you know, because the construction industry has been booming. And but it happens every place when it's so busy. Some contractors say, you know, I can't do anything for another year, I'm so busy. But anyway, thank you for that information. So, all in favor, say aye. Contrary, nay. Carried. Last one.
Resolution COS 21188, moved by Councillor Greg Campbell, seconded by Deputy Mayor McColman. Whereas quotations were received from drone fly by and video and picture taking of Summerside Sunbank project site for once per week for 56 weeks. Whereas the City of Summerside received 2 quotes in good order as follows. Firm number 1, Volatus Aerospace Skygate, cost and taxes included, $18,998. Higher Design, second firm, and the cost and taxes included $19,320. Be it resolved that the City of Summerside awards the drone flyby and picture taking of the Summerside Sunbank project to Volatus Aerospace for the value of $18,998. This bears the recommendation of the Committee of Electrical Services.
Moved by Councillor Greg Campbell and seconded by Deputy Mayor McColman. And I've got a question. You're light on, Councillor Snow? It's got an angle out there. I can hardly. There we go.
I'm low, I'm lower to the ground, so
Okay.
it's the angle that
Snow
has.
and Adams, and then
I guess my question is just, is that the, and it must be, it's tendered out, but going right for flying, doing some videoing for an hour or however long, drive by?
Mr. Goody.
I can talk to the process.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily a formal tender. It was more of a quote on what would cost per week to get a good documented project progression of video of the site. And then the drone is there to make sure there's actually 8 pictures being taken, because it's an 80-acre site, once per week. And then they're stitched together to they call an orthophoto. And so we'll have a really great promotional video at the end of the timeline of the whole construction process of such a signature project for the city, was the intent. And for marketing material down the road for others to use.
Councillor, sorry, go ahead.
I didn't mean to shut the light on. So they're 56 weeks, are they out multiple times a week? Are they out once a week?
Once per week, and they do a
For
complete 360, sorry.
For how long? Like, what would they,
Oh, it's one was $295 and the other was $300 per week for the 2 quotes received. So that's without taxes. So that's how close the pricing was. And they go out and they do a 360 flyby with the drone right around the whole site. And then they position the drone in 8 different quadrants to take pictures. I'm guessing by the time you take all the video and the stitching, it's probably close to half a day's work.
These are both local firms too, aren't they?
They are.
okay.
Councillor Adams, were you finished, Councillor Snow? Councillor Adams.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just had concern over the price. It seems extreme to me. I obviously have no knowledge of how it would be done or putting anything together, but it just seems like a ridiculous amount to me, but.
Because I guess it's a $68 million project overall?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Ballparkish, 67, or what was it?
65.8.
$65.8 million project, and I guess at the end of the day, and during the construction, you'll be able to view what, if anything did go wrong, or
Yeah,
it'll all be recorded.
To give you an example, we did a very similar thing with the Credit Union Place project,
Yes.
if you've seen the video, the
Yes,
stage progression, so this was the same idea behind that. And it's really meant for promotional material for the city to use in economic development wherever it needs to be used. The reason we went to these two companies, they're licensed to fly. We actually did check with other departmental people that have drones. And at that time, when we went out, they couldn't provide the services to link up with GPS and all the other good mapping stuff to be in the same position every time, that type of thing. So these guys are licensed and they do this fairly regularly. So that's the reason why they were picked.
and can be used for security purposes too.
Craig, you had, like, just to follow up on that, you had mentioned, like, you know, we did the Credit Union Place before. We're doing so much construction and we're growing, maybe it's something we should look at purchasing our own and having like one of the employee being able to do it rather than.
It's definitely a discussion. I don't know if I know the police had one the time I went out for this. I'm not aware of anybody else in the city that has the capability. I'm not sure if Tech Services has one or
Maybe something we
anybody
should
else.
just sort of think about.
Has he got one?
Okay, Councillor,
Okay.
I
I'm just
just
trying
had
to
kind
follow-
of a
Justin
question with,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just trying to follow the order here.
oh,
I had
I thought you
Councillor Duran
called.
and then
I'm sorry,
Councillor
Norma
Wright.
called on me.
Okay, sorry.
I thought that because there's a difference of $300 and they're both local companies, could we not have awarded like $300? Could we not have looked after both of them? You know what I mean? Like given them each anyway, that's just what is 300, you know what I'm saying? It's almost like it's a 50-cent difference. And I'd like to see everybody get the work. I hate to see for such a small amount of money that they both couldn't have worked together. You know what I'm saying? I'm
do.
just trying to, yeah.
I think the principal that owns Volatus Aerospace, Lee, actually taught and trained the drone flyer for higher design, and I believe he has in the past subbed out to him on occasion, much as I know.
So they might work in each other.
Correct.
And then I think Councillor Duran is next,
Yeah.
and then Councillor Dougal.
Thank you, Your
If I
Worship.
get my names right here.
I'm glad you're here because the explanation kind of calmed me down a little bit.
Yeah.
I initially had concerns about the high amounts. I know. Geez, me or Bruce, I would have done it for a hamburger a day, not. But certainly couldn't do some of that more elaborate stuff. But no, I'm glad you're here because I might have considered either tabling this or I might not have recognized the value in the marketing further on. So I guess that's all I have.
One
largest
final
project in
point is they went and surveyed the site too as part of the startup costs that are wrapped in these prices to do the flight plan, to do the same positioning to get the coverage we need, and also the video pattern. So they did do some work, and then I assume once they program it in, it's repeatable. But I'm not really flown a drone flyer, so I don't really know the specifics.
Councillor Dougal.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it'll be great to have. No, I don't want to do it. I might fly over it a couple of times just to take a look, but my question was the Summerside preference used here in pricing?
They're both local. See?
Well, one's in Slumber Park and one's in Summerside.
Well, if
I
he,
did know over 15,000.
Pardon?
I didn't over the 15,000.
Okay.
When you look at the.
Oh,
funding.
yeah,
Our preference,
Yeah.
I think currently
Yeah.
is under 15,000.
Okay, it was just a question, and I forgot that it was 15, so.
And before, Deputy Mayor, again, there was a presentation made last week to the Atlantic mayors, and they were all by your department and Mike Tasaska.
Yeah.
I believe Mike is with us, or he's about to be with us. And there was a lot of very positive comments from all the other Atlantic Canadian cities and towns about this project that's going on in Summerside and how it got tied together. And we commended the city staff for their work that they did on it, as well as the support, 100% support from council. Anyway, we're getting to the point where we can vote on this now. All in favor, say aye. Contrary, nay. Carried.
Okay, and that was the last one, Your Worship.
That's the
And
last one you have?
thank you to members of council.
So we're back into committees then. Councillor Drawn, you still have the floor, sir. You're doing tech services?
Is that it? That's the last item.
On council, yes. So, we should adjourn that council meeting and then continue on with the, moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by Councillor McDougall. All in favor? Meeting adjourned? Contrary, nay? Carried? Okay, we'll call the committee meetings back to order. Councillor Drawn.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This one should be relatively quickly. I know last month at our committee meeting, we had a request for staff to explore some of the crosswalk policies. I had a resident contact me, and this is particularly, I don't want to say it's any more important than any other place, but you know, this is right in front of a daycare, so that is kind of a flag there as far as priority goes. It was a request to basically put a crosswalk in front of Precious Lamb's Daycare, which is right on Pope Road, across to the sidewalk on the other side of Pope Road. A lot of the times, the daycare children, they take them places, they travel on foot, and as it is now, they either have to walk on the grass away, or they have to basically cross the street whenever there's a break. So I just had the request to bring that forward and see if there's any interest in possibly looking into putting something there. There is a couple images that they're just conceptual.
That's where you'd like to see it.
They requested either right at the corner, and I know we're not really in the practice of putting them in places where there's not an intersecting street. So one option was from the corner of, I think it's Weeks or Lily. Weeks, yeah, and then Lily's off of Weeks. So on the corner of Weeks, just over to the, basically to the grass, but I mean, the daycare property is right there, so. And then another option was just further down.
We haven't got the police chief with us here, but I'm just wondering, the director or engineer from Tech Services, but to have a crosswalk going across right into somebody's lawn, what do you do in the wintertime when there's no sidewalk for them, when they get across there? Where do they?
And the only reason that option was kind of requested was because that one is it's closer to the actual parking lot. Whereas if you were to put it on the corner, it kind of goes onto the lawn of the building next to the daycare, but still a lot safer.
Yeah. As you know, there's been a lot of discussion here over the years about crosswalks going across, and would the city be liable in any way, shape, or form by having a crosswalk going to there? I'm not sure, and maybe we should get some legal advice on that, but.
And that's the idea, to
Yeah.
put it through as another request. I know that one last week was one of the new streets off of McEwen Road, to see if it would be warranted there, and that goes from one intersection to a non-intersection, so that's why I kind of had this one on there as well. It's the similar situation.
So I guess the request is to ask our CEO to check with our legal department to see if it's possible, and if we should.
Yeah, if we can check with, in conjunction with police services and technical services, and just to see if it's one of those spots that it would be supported by either one of those departments.
Is the primary use for the daycare itself? Is that
The
is that
primary
what we're
use
thinking?
would be, there are people that attend the daycare that happen to walk from that area, but yeah, the majority of the safety concern would be from the
I'm
people leaving the
wondering-
daycare.
I'm wondering, we have many crosswalks around the city that we add crossing flags to. I wonder if the daycare itself bought some flags in the meantime. If it's a legit concern and they're worried, you know, as they're taking their group walking, they can stick out the flag. People in the city are starting to get to see them around. They would recognize that anyway until we figure out, and maybe that's enough to solve the issue for them, right? If that, it's just a way to get the children across safely.
Possibly, yeah. What they're doing now is they're crossing at that location from the property next door, which I think used to be a business. I think now it's a home. It has a really big horseshoe driveway in it. They're traveling across the lawns to about this point and then crossing over to where the sidewalk starts.
I
But
guess
there-
sorry, I have no issue, actually, I think we need to make sure that we do as much as we can around schools and daycares and so on, but obviously we'd have to do, if we were to move ahead, I think we need to make sure that they're not walking into just a curb. And
Yeah,
you'd have to
exactly.
get into a landing, because if they're walking across there with strollers, et cetera, then they're gonna be going down the side of the street and be
Yeah.
more dangerous than what it is now. There's no sidewalk on that side to go into, so I guess that's where my question was, if it's them getting across the street, it makes a lot of sense to me that they come out the end of their laneway, because I don't know how many other residents in the area would be using that crosswalk.
Especially with snow cutting
Yeah.
along there too. Councillor?
Yeah, no, it's just something that I was asked to present and kind of hand off to whoever may be able to take a look at that.
Maybe we'll ask our CAO to follow it up with the legal department and the police department to see, and bring back something at the next tech services meeting? Is that sufficient, Councillor Drummond?
For me, it would be, yeah, that's,
Okay.
there was no real-time constraint put on it. I know as we hit winter, there's probably less foot travel there anyway, so.
Thank you. Do you have anything further for tech
No,
services?
your worship, that is
You
everything.
got
for-
your roundabout all opened up on
Yes, lots of,
Pope and Central?
lots of good things. Lots of,
And working
hearing lots of
great.
good things. It's
Traffic
working
is
great.
running smoothly.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to the next committee meeting. We had the police, and now... Can you believe it? We're at the end of our agenda, and it's only 7:20. Oh, we still got a couple items that we have to come back in. Let's take a break. I guess as a committee of the whole, couple of Municipal Government Act sections to talk about. Let's adjourn for 10 minutes before we come back on committee of the whole. So moved by Councillor McDougall and seconded by Deputy Mayor McColman. Thank you. All in favour? And Brian is getting us disconnected here with